Story 1. The rest stop didn't exist, but my logs show I stayed there for 9 hours. This happened to me in 2019, somewhere along Route 35 in Texas. I'd been driving long haul for a while by then. It was a Tuesday night, and I remember it was humid even after the sun had gone down. The trailer I was pulling was a refrigerated unit, fully loaded, and I was making my usual stop before pushing into Oklahoma the next morning. Around 11:30 p.m., and I started feeling that mental fog truckers know well, the microlapses, the zone-outs. I pulled up my navigation system to look for a nearby rest stop. There was one listed about 11 miles out. The icon showed a parking area, vending machines and bathrooms. I remember the little dot glowing green, marked as available. That's where it gets strange. The moment I turned off onto the exit ramp, the road felt wrong. Not dangerous, not dramatic, just off. The turnoff was more curved than I remembered, and when I passed the sign for the rest stop, it was rusted out, barely legible, but I figured it was just old infrastructure. Texas doesn't exactly keep every truck stop pristine. I pulled into the lot. Gravel, not paved, no lights, but there were 2 other semis already parked, both with their hazard lights blinking. That gave me just enough reassurance. I backed into a space and turned off the engine. The only sound was the low hum of my refrigeration unit. I remember unbuckling, checking my messages, and drinking half a bottle of water before crawling into the sleeper. 9 hours. That's how long I was off duty according to my ELD log. From 12:02 a.m. to 9:01 a.m. the next morning, but I barely remember sleeping. What I do remember, waking up a few times, not because of noise, but because it felt like someone was walking outside the truck, like soft crunching in the gravel. At one point, I pulled the curtain back and peeked out through the side mirror. No one, just trees, thin, tall, like old matchsticks. No rest stop buildings, no vending machines, and the 2 trucks that were there when I arrived, gone. I chalked it up to grogginess. My alarm went off, I logged back on duty and drove off. But when I reached the next way station, something weird happened. The officer asked me where I'd been parked. I told him, rest stop off 35, just past mile marker 244. He looked up, confused. There's no rest stop there, he said. I thought maybe he was mistaken. After all, I'd parked there myself. I even pulled up the GPS history on my dash tablet to prove it. But the tablet had no record of the rest stop. It just showed me pulling off the highway, stopping for 9 hours in a green zone labeled undeveloped. That's when I really started questioning it. That night, after my delivery, I tried to retrace my route. Same turns, same mile marker, same exit. This time it led me to a patch of grass and dirt. No gravel lot, no structure, no signage, just an empty clearing surrounded by trees. I parked and stepped out. The air felt heavy, like the humidity had thickened. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just listening. No wind, no birds, just stillness. I kicked the ground. It was soft earth, no sign of gravel. I walked in circles trying to find tire marks or anything that would tell me this was the same place. But there was nothing. Nothing to suggest it had ever been used for anything at all. Later, I looked up archived satellite views on my laptop. On Google Earth, you can pull up older imagery. In a view from 2014, there was clearly a small gravel lot marked Public Rest Area. In 2016, still visible, but in the 2018 and 2019 images, just grass, like it had been erased. I've asked other drivers about it since. A few said they remembered stopping there a long time ago, but none had been there recently. One guy told me the whole place got decommissioned and bulldozed in 2017. If that's true, then I have no explanation for what happened, because I was there. In 2019, my logs show it. And to this day, that location still appears in my ELD reports. Just a timestamp, a location ID that doesn't exist anymore. I started using a sleep tracking app sometime that spring. Nothing fancy, just one of those apps that records sound when you're asleep. Mostly, I used it for snoring or to make sure I wasn't sleep-talking. It gave me peace of mind. After that strange stop off Route 35, I didn't think much more about it until 2 days later. I was doing my usual post-trip routine, uploading logs, checking routes and syncing my phone apps. That's when I noticed something odd on the sleep tracker. It had recorded audio at 2:14 a.m. that night. I almost deleted it without listening. Figured it was just road noise or a gust of wind. But the file name caught my eye. The app auto-generates labels sometimes based on recurring patterns. This one said, "Repeating voice detected." I played it. At first, just static, the kind of fuzz you hear in old analog recordings. Then, footsteps, slow, crunching gravel, and then the voice. It was muffled, low, like it was outside the cab but close to the mic. Male, but flat, not whispering, just quiet. It said very clearly, "Driver 5176, you stayed too long." The sentence repeated. Same tone, same cadence, like a loop. "Driver 5176, you stayed too long." I stopped the recording, heart racing. I didn't recognize the voice, but it didn't sound like a person talking to someone. It sounded like a message, like an automated alert, but not electronic. Human voice, but emotionless. No inflection. I went back and checked my ELD, my driver ID, 5176, exactly. It had never occurred to me before that my driver ID might be used in a context like that. Dispatch uses it. The app syncs to it, but to hear it spoken, at that rest stop, that was something else entirely. I shared the clip with 2 people. One was another driver I trust. He thought it was a prank, said maybe someone nearby had a scanner or intercom, but there was no one around, just trees. The second person was my brother. He works in cybersecurity. I emailed him the raw audio file. A day later, he called me. "You need to tell me exactly where you recorded this," he said. He'd run the waveform through analysis software. He said the voice didn't match typical human inflection. It was uniform in amplitude, almost synthetic, but not synthesized. "It's like someone rehearsed the line 50 times until the pitch never varied," he told me, "or like a person trying to sound like a machine." I asked him if he could clean up the background. What he sent me was worse. You can hear breathing, not mine. It's faster, shallower. It's on the other side of the audio field. Then the voice says the line again, but this time it sounds closer. "Driver 5176, you stayed too long." And in the last few seconds of the clip, there's a second voice, barely audible. "Not supposed to stop here." I've played that file maybe 20 times, and every time I do, I swear I hear something new. About a week later, I brought all of this to dispatch, not because I thought they'd care, but because I wanted to know if my logs were clean. Some companies get real twitchy about off-duty times not matching expected rest areas. My dispatcher, Terry, asked me to send over my ELD export and the GPS history. He called me back an hour later. "You marked off duty for 9 hours, he said. "Standard." "Yeah," I said. "At the rest stop." "There's no rest stop there," he replied. I told him I knew, that I'd driven back, that I'd seen it was just trees. Then he said something that made my chest go tight. "We reviewed your in-cab footage." "What for?" He paused. "You never closed your eyes," he said, "not once. From 12:10 a.m. to 8:56 a.m., you were upright, looking forward, like watching something." I didn't understand. "So I was awake." He hesitated again. "That's the thing. You never moved." I didn't have a response. I just sat there listening to him breathe on the other end. "We ran the footage through our telematics interface," he said, "and we got flagged by the FMCSA." I blinked. "What?" "There's a new algorithm they're piloting," he explained. "It flags anomalies in driver activity, things that don't add up. Your stop triggered it." I asked what that meant. "It means," he said slowly, "that based on your biometrics and cab telemetry, your vehicle thinks you weren't alone." I didn't say anything. "We're required to forward the report," he added. "But off the record, I'd reset the ELD, wipe the onboard memory." I asked if that would cause issues. "Not if you never stop there again," he said. Then quietly, "assuming you can find it." Since that call, I've had 3 routes past that same stretch of road. Each time I've looked for the turnoff, the curve, the faded sign, but it's not there. Just a wall of trees. And when I sleep in my truck now, I turn the camera off and cover the mirror. Because sometimes, in the black glass reflection, I think I see movement, even when I'm still, even when I know I'm alone. Story 2. The hitchhiker knew my route, even though I hadn't decided it yet. This happened to me in the summer of 2021, while I was hauling pallet shelving from Phoenix to Springfield. It was early in the trip, somewhere along US 60, near the New Mexico line. It had been one of those long, dry, monotonous mornings where the air vibrated off the asphalt and the white lines all looked the same. I remember pulling over just outside a place called Dattel, at a tiny pull-off, with a sign that just said, "Food." It wasn't a chain, just one of those old diners that still uses those half-faded Coca-Cola umbrellas and screeches when the door opens. I parked the semi alongside the back lot, away from the sun, and walked in. The bell above the door jingled. It was quiet. 3 people total. The cook, a waitress, and a guy half asleep at the counter. Classic scene. I picked a booth against the window, ordered a coffee, and waited for the fog in my brain to lift. That's when I noticed her. She was already sitting across from me. I hadn't seen her walk in, hadn't heard the bell. Nothing. But there she was, dark blue windbreaker, dusty jeans, and one of those little travel packs people wear across their chest. Her hands were folded neatly. Her hair was tied back. She was looking at me calmly, as if we'd been having a conversation that I'd just paused. I asked, "You need something?" She smiled. "You stopped." I didn't understand what that meant. She said her name was Erin, no last name, no accent. She didn't explain how she got there or why she was sitting with me. I asked if she needed a ride. She didn't say yes. She just looked at me and said, "You'll decide after the coffee." I remember thinking she might have been homeless or just strange, but something in her tone. It was like she was waiting for something she already knew would happen. The coffee came. She didn't order anything, but the waitress smiled at her like she was a regular. Erin didn't touch anything, just sat there, watching me. After a few minutes, I stood up and excused myself to the bathroom. Just needed a break from her stare. The diner had one of those narrow hallway restrooms, barely enough room to turn around. I ran cold water over my hands, stared into the mirror longer than I needed to. When I came back to the booth, she was gone. No sign of her. No sound of the bell, just gone. I sat back down, trying to make sense of it. The coffee mug across from me was empty. I hadn't noticed that before. The waitress passed by and I asked, "Where'd the woman go?" She blinked. "What woman?" I said. "The one sitting right here, Erin." She looked confused. "You came in alone, hun." I didn't argue. I just waited for the check. When it came, I glanced at the printed receipt. Under order summary were 2 entries. Coffee X2, hash brown plate X1, then at the bottom, meal for 2, table 6. My hands started to sweat. I asked the waitress if the system had a glitch. She looked at the slip, then at me. "You sure you're okay?" I paid in cash and left without answering. When I reached the truck, I noticed something on the passenger door, a single fingerprint smudge, right near the handle. I didn't see her again for the rest of that day. The desert faded into dusk, and by the time I hit I-40, the light had turned that weird golden-pink color that always makes everything feel too still. I passed through Gallup, took the northern bypass, and pushed another 2 hours into New Mexico before I finally stopped to rest. I parked at a small turnout near a bluff, just dirt and space, surrounded by nothing but scrub. I didn't trust the truck stops that night. I felt like being alone. The heat inside the cab was still heavy, even with the vents cracked. I fell asleep listening to the engine tick as it cooled. That's when the dreams started. I was looking at a map. Not a screen or a GPS, but a physical map. Folded, creased, covered in handwritten scribbles. Every line, every road, every exit, every city kept circling back to the same spot. In the middle of the map, The roads all overlapped. They didn't lead to a town or a marker, just one word: repeat. I kept trying to trace my way out of it, trying to pick a new path, but no matter which road I followed, the lines curled back, over and over, like a maze designed with only one endpoint. I don't remember waking up. What I do remember is this: when I opened my eyes, the road was moving fast. The yellow stripes were flying past, and the headlights were on. My hands weren't on the wheel. They were resting in my lap. I jerked up, grabbed the wheel, panicking. My heart was hammering. I had no memory of starting the truck, no memory of getting back on the highway, nothing. And then I looked to my right. She was there, Erin, in the passenger seat, calm, composed, watching the road. She didn't look surprised to see me awake. She just said, "You were supposed to sleep longer." I shouted, slammed the brakes, veered toward the shoulder. The semi shook violently, but I managed to stop without jackknifing. I turned toward her, breath ragged, but the seat was empty. I reached over and touched it, still warm. I checked the passenger side mirror, nothing. Then I looked down. On the floorboard was my road atlas, the one I kept in the side pouch, zipped up. It was open, turned to a route I hadn't planned on taking, one I didn't even remember marking. And in the center of the page, where the state lines crossed, someone had written the word again: repeat. Same handwriting from the dream. That night, I didn't drive anymore. I pulled out the keys, climbed into the sleeper, and stayed there until sunrise, holding a tire iron in both hands. 3 days later, I hit the Oklahoma way station outside Tulsa. I hadn't slept properly since the dream. I'd see glimpses of her in reflections, mirrors, windows, even in the black glass of the GPS unit, but only for a second. I'd look, and she'd be gone. I hadn't told anyone yet. Part of me still thought maybe I was overtired, hallucinating. But the fingerprint on the door was still there, and so was the folded map, now sealed inside a Ziploc bag in my duffel. At the way station, I asked to speak to the officer privately. He looked at me a little sideways but said sure, took me into a back office while another guy walked around my truck with a clipboard. I told him everything: Erin, the diner, the bathroom, the disappearing, the drive I didn't remember starting, the map, the voice in the dream. He didn't interrupt me once, just listened, and when I finished he said, "You're not the first." I stared at him. We've had 5, maybe 6 reports like this over the years, always similar. A woman, early 30s, calm voice, knows things she shouldn't. He leaned in slightly. "Do you remember how old she looked?" "Maybe 35, I said. "Why?" He stood up and motioned to one of the officers to keep checking my vehicle. Then he asked to inspect the cab. We walked out together. I let him inside and he started looking around, checked the sleeper, under the seats. Dash cam logs, nothing. Then he pointed at the glove box. "May I?" I nodded. He opened it slowly, carefully, like he already knew what was in there. He reached inside, pulled out a folded piece of paper, then something underneath it. A photo. Worn edges, a little water-stained, but still clear enough to see me, sitting in the driver's seat of a different truck, older, maybe 2 decades ago, clean-shaven, younger, and sitting next to me, her, same windbreaker, same look, same folded hands, but she looked older in the photo. Not younger, older, like she'd been that age before, and had come back. On the back of the photo, someone had written in pencil, "First ride." I asked the officer where it came from. He didn't answer, just handed it to me. Then he said something I'll never forget. "There's a theory some of the old guys talk about. Not officially, but quietly. They call them recursion hitches, people who ride along routes but never age forward. They circle back, hitchhike through time, not distance." He looked out over the highway. "She learns more every loop, more about you, about what you'll do next. And eventually," he paused, "she figures out how to stay." I asked what I was supposed to do. He said, "Don't stop for her again." I never saw her after that. But every now and then, when I pass through a quiet stretch of highway, I see someone walking alone, thumb out, facing the direction I'm heading. And I don't look twice, because if I do, she might smile. And this time, she might not leave. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. The radio talked to me, but it wasn't playing anything. This happened in late 2022. I was running a 3-day contract through Wyoming and Utah, the kind of route you dread in the winter. Open stretches, endless flatness, brutal wind shear. I'd done it before, but this time felt different before I even left the yard. Everything started with the radio. Not music, not static, just this faint click between channels, like something trying to tune in on its own. It started outside Rawlins, about 2 hours before sunset. I was on I-80, somewhere between mile marker 184 and 190, when the CB began flicking to channel 1 on its own. I didn't think much of it at first. These rigs get weird when the wiring ages, and mine was due for a full service. But when I tried switching it back, the knob resisted. Then, without input, it clicked again. Back to channel 1. There was no broadcast, no chatter, just silence. And then, for a second, just a second, I heard my own voice come through, a short phrase. "You missed it." That's all it said. I froze. Didn't even process what I'd heard until the silence returned. I glanced in my mirror. Nothing but highway behind me. Ahead, just before the sun dipped below the horizon, I spotted another truck. It looked familiar. Same cab model, same exact trailer make, even the same mismatched panel on the left rear, like mine, from an old side-swipe repair. It was pulling steadily ahead of me. I watched as it took an exit I'd never noticed before, a left fork off the interstate, no sign, no overhead lighting. The ramp curved upward, then dipped behind a small hill. Curious, I checked my nav. No road was listed. Just coordinates, 0000, no road name. No indication it existed. Still, I followed. My tires rolled over cracked, darkened asphalt that smelled faintly of burned plastic, like something synthetic had been lit and buried beneath the road. The sound changed under the tires, less gravel, more texture. I can't explain it, like driving across scorched vinyl. No other vehicles, no street lights, and no reception. Even my CB was dead silent now. I remember passing through an area of total darkness, like the sky had folded inward. The truck ahead remained in view. Its lights kept flashing, but without reflection, just twin glows floating through blackness. I followed for 5, maybe 6 minutes, before something in my gut screamed to stop. I braked hard. My trailer shuddered behind me. The truck ahead kept going, disappearing around a bend. I didn't move. The smell in the cab intensified. Burned plastic mixed with something older, like melted rubber and wet cardboard. Then, without warning, all my electronics rebooted. The dashboard flickered. The CB let out a single, sharp tone, like a sine wave, then went silent. My screen finally reloaded, and I was back on I-80 at mile marker 188, as if nothing had happened, except I'd lost 40 minutes, and the fuel gauge showed a quarter tank missing. I pulled off at the next service station. My hands were shaking too much to keep going. Something about the exit had twisted my sense of time and my judgment. I slept in the cab that night, parked between 2 tankers under a buzzing sodium light. I woke up twice, soaked in sweat, but couldn't remember dreaming. When the sun came up, I finally had the nerve to review my dash cam. I figured it would show me pulling over on I-80, maybe idling too long. Something benign, but that's not what it showed. I watched the footage, and I followed the other truck. Not for 5 minutes. Not for 6, for 37 minutes. Straight. The footage didn't show an exit, no turnoff, no left fork, just a steady drive down what looked like the same highway, except no signs, no passing traffic, no sky, just an endless tunnel of black asphalt surrounded by tall, narrow trees. Trees I didn't remember seeing in that part of Wyoming, and then it got worse. At timestamp 21:42 into the clip, the truck ahead, the one I'd been following, slowed, then veered into a tunnel cut into the base of a rock face. There's no tunnel like that anywhere near where I was. None on the map, none in the dotty infrastructure data I looked up later. But the dash cam clearly captured it. Dark, rectangular, big enough for a semi, carved stone with no lights. And above the entrance, faint but readable, "Return Route 2." I watched the recording closely. In real life, I'd slammed the brakes, I'd refused to follow. But on the footage, I turned in after it. I followed, and the camera kept recording. No sound. Just 16 more minutes of footage. The interior of the tunnel had no markings, no lanes, just a steady hum in the background like low-frequency vibration. It went on, with no turns and no slope, just flat road in total darkness. I appeared calm, one hand on the wheel, staring forward. No music, no radio. The only change came at the very end. The recording cut out mid-frame, no fade, no power down, just a blink. And when it resumed, I was back on the main road, merging onto I-80 as if I'd exited a rest area. There was no indication I'd ever left the highway, except now my face in the video looked different, like I was staring at something only I could see. Expressionless, not confused, not scared, just blank. I backed up the footage again and again. In the tunnel, my dashboard clock didn't change, but my eyes never blinked. Not once. I sent the footage to a friend I'd known since training school, Rick. He used to work maintenance for a regional carrier, but he was always the tech-obsessed one in our group. Did security installs and electrical audits on the side. He called me that same night. "You didn't fake this?" "No," I said. "Why would I?" He was quiet a second. "Because what you're describing, it lines up with a theory I heard once, from a guy who used to work logistics for the NTSB. He explained that once in a while they received unofficial reports, incidents that were flagged as non-attributable anomalies. Not accidents, not malfunctions, just impossible logs. Trucks appearing in way stations without matching GPS trails. Rigs seen by multiple drivers, then vanishing before reaching their scheduled yard. Dash cams showing routes that don't exist. And sometimes, only sometimes, recordings of drivers repeating conversations they'd already had, word for word, with no memory of doing so. They called them ghost rigs. No one really knew what they were. Some thought they were hallucinations from sleep deprivation. Others believed they were reflections, like a trucker's own route folding over itself, a kind of echo. But Rick said the theory that stuck with him was worse. He said a few classified internal memos hinted at something deliberate. Signals, broadcasts embedded in rural zones, strong enough to disrupt memory, auditory manipulation, identity overlap. They called it auto-identification breakdown, he said. Like your brain gets two versions of yourself at the same time and can't tell which one is real. That's when I told him about the voice. He paused. "You didn't say there was audio." I described what the CB had said. "You missed it." He asked if I'd had any more. I hadn't, until that night. It came back around 2 a.m. I was parked at a pilot station outside Lincoln, Nebraska. My windows were cracked. Rain tapping the glass. The cab was dark except for the soft blue of the console display. The CB powered on by itself. Channel 1. And then the voice. Flat, quiet, measured. "This is your second warning." Then silence. I sat there, frozen. Then, barely audible, it added, "You're not supposed to remember the third." The line cut off with a pop. I pulled the CB fuse the next morning. Haven't used it since. I tried forgetting all of it. The video, the tunnel, the smell, the road that didn't exist. I told myself it was sleep deprivation. Too many hours, too many night runs. But 2 weeks later, I woke up in my cab after a long run through Kansas. My logbook showed I'd been parked 6 hours, but the dash cam showed something else. It showed the truck moving, at night, through a black corridor, no signs, no other cars, and faintly, just once, off-screen, a voice said, Third loop complete. Resetting operator. I don't remember driving, but I haven't been able to forget anything since.